they need to find somebody who can come in here and win with Jalen Hurts because he ain't going anywhere. And I think I keep bringing up the name Mike McDaniel, and whether or not that's realistic, I think it's a good for instance of, look, most play callers are just a guy, and I think Kevin Patullo is just as much of just a guy as anybody else. I don't think he's any more of a liability than Zach Taylor. I think he's just an average offensive coordinator, and I think Mike McDaniel's the kind of guy who actually brings a lot of value in the way he schemes the run game. And right now, they need to find somebody who can win differently because they're not winning the way they've won in the past.
Now, here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I know in terms of like Kevin Patullo's future, and this is just kind of talking, to people inside the building, around the league, et cetera, and just knowing the pieces, the players at play here, right? With Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, and from what I understand, like there were conversations being held over the last few weeks about like the questions that we were even asking ourselves as a kind of a media core was like, okay, what's it going to take for Kevin Patullo to stay? Do they have to get to the Super Bowl? Do they have to win to the Super Bowl? And internally they were asking themselves the same question, how bad will it look if we move on from him and after reaching the Super Bowl? It could have happened and it might have happened, but this way they have an easy, it's an easy out. I also know how Howie Roseman works, and from what I can understand, there definitely, or let's just say that I'm pretty sure that through some sort of proxy or some intermediary that like olive branches have been extended. Like they're not going into this postseason unprepared, this offseason, not prepared to find a replacement. So my guess is that this will move quickly. They have to get in on this. They can't lose a guy that they've targeted with, there's how many head coaching vacancies are there and guys looking for offensive coordinators? There's a number of them.
So is that by you? Is that a nod to Cliff Kingsbury because he kind of left to seek other opportunities as if something were on the plate already? What are you're kind of hinting at something there? What have you heard?
I don't know specifically about Kingsbury. I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone that they will target just because of his experience with bringing some college elements to the NFL. And I think that Jalen Hurts still needs that. As much as Jalen thinks that he can be this drop back quarterback and not run the ball as much, I think we saw the flaws in that type of quarterbacking for him this season. And look, I understood it based on the injuries that he had, and he's going to be 28 next season. Like it's going to wear you down at some point, and you can't live in that world all the time. But there has to be some of it. There had to be more of it. And they need someone, quite frankly, they need a quarterback guru in here. Like they need someone who has a proven history of getting better getting quarterbacks to improve, especially one specifically like Jalen Hurts. I mean, Nick Sirianni is a former wide receiver. Kevin Patullo is a former wide receiver. No knock on these guys, but just because of that position stuff, you see good offensive coordinators and play callers that weren't necessarily quarterbacks. But Shane Steichen was a quarterback at a high level, played in college. Kellen Moore played quarterback in the NFL. Like, there's a reason why so many offensive coordinators are former quarterbacks. Now, Mike McDaniel, for instance, wasn't a quarterback. If you talk to that guy, he's a total savant. Sean McVay wasn't a former quarterback. Kyle Shanahan wasn't a former quarterback. These are all former receivers. But that being said, I think what Jalen needs is someone of that ilk.
Yeah, I think. Look, you saw it again. I always try to be careful when I'm talking about Hurts because no criticism kind of is meant to diminish what he's accomplished and or ignore the fact that he is clearly the league. There's half the quarterbacks in the league you can't win with, and he's in the top half where you can win with him. He's not a liability, and the difference now is he's not a force multiplier the way he was. It really hasn't been even throughout. I mean, that Super Bowl MVP was mostly just pick an option, any option last year. I mean, he really hasn't been that guy since the Bills game 2 years ago where he and Josh Allen went at it at Lincoln Financial Field right before they collapsed in 23. But yeah, I mean, look, Brock Purdy, part of it hurts his arm strength, part of it is size. But when you look at a guy like Brock Purdy, he does not necessarily have either one of those things in spades either. But what he has, and you saw it on the pass to McCaffrey in the end zone at the end, is he stays in the pocket, he moves in the pocket, he keeps his eyes downfield and waits for his guy to come open or waits for a window. And Hurts just doesn't have that, and he's never had it. it's the biggest differentiator between guys coming out of college, whether they're going to succeed or not. It's their footwork and their ability to maintain their attention downfield. And, Purdy did it. That was the big difference between those two quarterbacks. It was Hurts was drop back and at the first, bail out before, even there's plenty of time. He's just not a great quarterback is what it comes down to. A great pure quarterback. And I don't know if a quarterback guru can fix that. But I will say, he did make unbelievable strides between year one and year two, became a completely different player and much closer to a guy that could be a franchise guy in the NFL. And, I wonder if he rededicated himself and worked with someone who some sort of Peyton Manning type who could come in and just drill him, and get him to build that kind of split consciousness that you need in the pocket. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a play caller. I think a lot of it is technical.